Do I see you? Perfect.
Good evening and welcome. Today is Monday, April 29th, 2019. This is the Everett School District Board of School Directors Legislative Meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to ask Mr. Kaplan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will everybody please stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. And then Ms. Evans, can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Franczyk. Here. Mrs. Good. Here. Dr. Kim.
Please excuse.
Dr. Ludwig. Here. Mr. Ropsky.
Here.
Mrs. Rothman.
Here.
Mrs. Sherpier.
Here.
Mr. Sirota.
Here.
Dr. Levino.
Here. Okay. Eight here. Excuse. And I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. This has been a very busy month for all of us. So much going on, and Dr. Yanni in his presentation tonight will highlight some of the activities that occurred over this past month. The only item I'd like to speak about briefly is today was Advocacy Day on the Hill in Harrisburg, and three of us, Dr. Ludwig, Ms. Franczyk, and myself, spent the day in Harrisburg meeting with various legislators, talking about some of the issues that are affecting all of the school districts. Of course, state, there were three major items that were talked about. One is the state budget, one is charter schools, specifically cyber charter school funding, and the last one is PlanCon. So we got to sit down with some of the legislators and talk. We had a briefing paper for them, and then we spent time talking about some of the issues, and then at the end of the day we had a press conference on the steps of the rotunda, and I thought it went very well, and we're already planning next year's Advocacy Day, and I think it's a very important role that school boards play in terms of not only the work that we do at the local level, but to advocate for what we think the needs are at the state level and at the district level with all legislators, not only especially our local legislators who we spent most of the time today speaking with. I'd like to now move on to our Student Government Association report. Mr. Daniel Kaplan.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. The school has been quieter recently with the senior class leaving for the class trip to Disney this past Friday. They will come back tomorrow. For the rest of the students, AP testing and keystones are right around the corner, starting next week. The Student Government Association has yet again successfully elected a new steering committee, including Rising Seniors Rusol John as president, Vice President Sammy Haverson, Activities Chair Nina Jang, Policies and Procedures Chair Gwen Hoffman, School Improvement Chair Noah Milrod, and Community Service Chair Sammy Garcia. Also elected, incoming juniors Julie Velez to be Secretary, Kira Zamborski as Information and Communication Chair, Spirit Chair Leanna Long, James Pang as Treasurer, and myself to be School Board Representative again, and incoming sophomore underclassman representative Luke Price. We are thrilled for the upcoming year. Additionally, the SGA has successfully completed another Staff Appreciation Week, where teachers, crossing guards, and other staff members in the UD community were honored, and a Wish Week where students had various wishes granted by the Student Government Association. In other news, the theater department filled up many seats with their spring musical Grease, which took place 3 weeks ago. Students are getting back into the swing of things after a luxurious spring break and are very prepared to finish these last few weeks off strong. Thank you for all your time, and I'm thrilled to spend another year as the school board representative in the 2019 to 2020 school year. Thank you.
We're so excited that you'll be back next year, Daniel, and many of us have the opportunity to see Grease, and the entire cast was wonderful, and you were great. The only obligation you have is one month you'll have to sing your report to us. Start working on it. Okay. Okay, now we have a presentation by Dr. Yanni, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, Dr. Levinowitz. As Dr. Levinowitz mentioned, today was Advocacy Day on the Hill in Harrisburg. Now more than ever, advocacy in public education is really important, and I think what we're seeing for the first time, possibly ever, is legislators really listening and wanting to speak with public school educators. So I'm thankful that our school district was well represented today. PSSA testing is coming to an end for those of you who have students in grades 3 through 8. Students have completed the ELA and math assessments, and this week 4th and 8th graders are finishing up the science assessments. We know that the PSSAs are just one metric that is used by PDE to measure and evaluate our schools. At an upcoming education committee meeting, I plan to show a draft of a scorecard that I've developed, and the scorecard will not only capture standardized testing scores, but a lot of other things that aren't measured by PDE. Everything from national merit scholarship winners to numbers of kids reading on grade level to staff participation in extracurricular events. The scorecard really aims to provide a more comprehensive view of Upper Dublin. Upper Dublin medals, very happy to report that Aaron Mock, high school science teacher, environmental science teacher, has been named Outstanding Educator. And also Ryan Goodman and Hannah Zhao were both named student medal winners. We hope everyone can join us on May 15th for the Upper Dublin medal ceremony. Earlier this month, we had the Alumni Hall of Fame. It was held Friday, April 5th. It was a great evening in my superintendent's report. All the names and their backgrounds are included, and I believe the plaques are up or will be up right across from the Cardinal Room soon. As Daniel mentioned, the high school theater department presented Grease. So I'd like to congratulate all the students who took part, and that it was a great show. We're continuing our strategic action planning work. By this Friday, on the website will be an update of where that work is at this moment. We are working on action plans for teaching and learning, technology, budget and finance, facilities and operation, and engagement. The reason we're putting all of the information up on the website is to encourage members of the public and the community to offer some comment on that. It's really important because these goals and action steps will be what guides our decision making for the next 3 to 5 years. I'd like to thank Jill Feldman and the Greenfield Foundation for hosting and making available the Greenfield Youth Film Festival last week. It was really wonderful to sit there and watch all of the student films from students from our district and from all the way, stretching from our district all the way to Berks County with students from Conrad, Weiser, and everywhere in between. It was a great event. Last Friday at Jarretttown, we had an Arbor Day program. Steve Stone from the Upper Dublin Shade Tree Commission was there. The school received a beautiful shade tree that's planted right by the playground. So we thank the township, the Shade Tree Commission for that. I'd like to ask everyone to follow our district calendar. We have any number of events coming up over the next 6 to 7 weeks as we make the final push here towards graduation, from concerts to PTO meetings to showcases and other events. There's no shortage of opportunities to see our students excel in many ways. That concludes my report.
Well, thank you. Indeed, it was a busy month, and it just will get more and more. I like to use the word exciting, up to graduation and the last week of school. We have 2 presentations tonight. The first one is on the general obligation bonds of 2019. We will then have a special community input for just that item in case our presenters are need to leave or they don't want to stay for the budget update. I know you may want to, but just in case you don't. Ms. Gray, anything to say in introductory remarks?
While our agenda specifically notes Ms. Doyle as leading the comments in the presentation, in addition to our financial advisor, we have Mr. George Magnata here tonight from Song Ewing as bond counsel. We actually will be voting on, or you will be voting on, excuse me, the parameters resolution later on underneath the finance portion. And of course, Ms. Doyle and Mr. Michael Lilly's RBC Capital Markets is the underwriter. All three of them will be explaining the transaction that we hope to take to market later this week. Jamie?
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. You should each have a document with a gold cover, and this presentation is very similar to the one that I made at your March 21st meeting. Nothing has really changed. This is step 2 of your financing plan. We anticipate issuing $9,995,000 to stay right below that $10 million calendar year limit to get the lower bank qualified interest rates and the shorter 5-year call feature. But if you look at page 1 of my handout, just to talk a little bit about market conditions and interest rates, the yield curve continues to be very, very flat, which is good. You're earning more on your investments, but most importantly, the long-term borrowing rates continue to be well below historic averages. There's still a lot more investor demand than there is supply for this type of bond right now, so that works in your favor as well. The middle part of the chart is the same index. It just shows what interest rates have done basically since November of 2018, and that is continue to move in your favor. And the bottom part of the chart is just a blow up of that little red box up above so you can see more clearly what has happened since November of 2018. To move quickly through the handout, I won't belabor some of these details, but tonight, as Ms. Gray mentioned, is the maximum parameters resolution for your consideration. By state law, we must set forth a maximum principal amount, a maximum interest rate, and a maximum final maturity, and I'll show you what that schedule looks like in a minute, but it's attached to your resolution this evening. And again, this is how you've issued bonds for quite some time, and the reason for it is it gives us maximum flexibility to go into the market at the best time as opposed to a day when you have a meeting that evening. And at the present time, we are planning to enter the market on Thursday of this week after the Federal Reserve Committee meeting wraps up. Moving on, too far, to page 4, and I won't belabor page 4, 5, and 6 because step 2 is the same in all of these, but the difference in all of these is step 3 depending on ultimately how big a project you decide to do. But again, step 2 is $9,995,000 maximum, and you can see what that proposed debt service might look like down below in column 10. And I am going to move back to page 8, where you will then see the maximum parameters schedule that again is part of your parameters resolution this evening. So we are setting forth a maximum final maturity date of May 15th, 2043. This schedule sets forth a maximum principal amount of $12 million. As always, we'll never issue more than $9,995,000, but I need the flexibility to resize once we lock in interest rates to ensure that the debt service is structured the way you'd like. And you'll see the maximum coupon there in column 3 is set at a 5.5%, not because I think we're going to get a 5.5%, but because there could be some premium bonds, so again, we need the flexibility to plan for and accommodate those. I am happy to answer any questions at this point in time before I turn it over to Mr. Lillis and Mr. Magnata to give you their comments.
Any questions from the board? No? Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I just make a brief comment or two about the market. That's typically what I like to do when I come here, and tonight won't be any different. Jimmy had mentioned interest rates have moved in your favor considerably. Maybe to put a little extra information on that is, last in 2018 rates have been increasing steadily throughout the year, got to early November, when rates kind of hit their high point, and just about that time, you may recall the stock market got very spooked, and the stock market got sold off considerably. I think it was more than 2,000 points. It went down, and at the very same time, interest rates started coming back down. Then a few weeks later, when the Fed decided that the market had really lost a lot of ground, they decided to come out and say, look, we have been planning on increasing rates in 2019 as a continuation of our plan over the last couple of years. In fact, they had said that they were planning on raising rates probably at least 2 times. So what they then said was that that plan is off the table right now. And they said, right now, there's no plans to increase rates next year. We're going to see how inflation goes. That's going to be one of the key determining factors. And so since early November, the rates have actually dropped right now to 0.9%, which is pretty dramatic. We never expected that. Nobody in the market really did. So this timing works out pretty well for you. And as far as the outlook goes right now, inflation looks like it's pretty under control. Last week, the GDP came out, and inflation figures were below the 2% target for the Fed. And so that's made the market, made the market comfortable with rates where they are. I would also add that the market is pricing in, believe it or not, a possibility that the Fed might actually cut rates one time this year. So all that, if that should happen, it all bodes pretty well for your remaining financing. But right now, the timing is really good for this issue.
And any questions from the board? Okay.
Good evening. In front of you is bond resolution, if you choose to adopt, which would put into action the authority for the underwriter to go into the market at the time now proposed to be this Thursday to implement the sale of bonds, subject to the parameters that are set forth on page 3, section 3 of the resolution, and the remaining part of the resolution authorizes the execution of the documents, the necessary filings with the Department of Community and Economic Development pursuant to the Local Government Unit Debt Act, permits the execution of the and the delivery of the offering document and all necessary papers to consummate the sale of the bonds and the delivery of the bonds. Questions?
Any questions from the board on this? Just a brief statement that we've been through this process a number of times, which is why I don't think there are any questions. And Ms. Doyle was here a month ago to make the presentation. So we've heard this presentation last month and last year when we talked about the first tranche. That's right.
We had very similar presentations when the first 10 million, was borrowed last October, I believe.
Right. Okay, so seeing no questions from the board, I'd like to open it up for community input if there are any questions from the community regarding this topic only. Okay, seeing none, we'd like to thank our team again, and we're looking forward to a very favorable sale later this week. Thank you. Okay, we are up to our second presentation of the evening. That's a budget update for 2019-2020 by Ms. Bray, our Chief Financial Officer.
Tonight's presentation will very much mirror what we discussed Thursday night at the Finance Committee. There will be a few points to augment. And one, we're going to start with the timeline because it's important to keep that in front of the public and everyone. Again, Finance Committee was last Thursday night. We're here tonight at the Legislative Committee, legislative meeting. Board of Secretary of Budget usually certifies that there's going to be property tax relief on or about April 15th of each year. And then usually the Secretary of Budget authorizes PDE to provide property tax relief. I've not seen any such notification yet from that office, but they usually do run late at PDE and the state. So it is only April the 29th, and I'm anticipating that that will come through, which leads us right into May. May 1st is an important date as far as they notify the school districts of funds available for property tax relief. We received from the Montgomery County Assessor's Office a certified report on the number of homesteads. We were having a conversation, and so that I don't forget it later on, about the difference between median average within Upper Dublin as well as the average assessment for properties. Last year, that amount median was $196,310, whereas we usually, when we're talking about tax calculations, use $195,000, in case I forget to mention it later on. In May, we'll have the Finance Committee meeting and a budget update. Probably talk about transfers to other funds. That will be on May 16th. May 20th will be our legislative meeting, and there will be board action, a vote on the proposed final budget for 1920. And since there needs to be 30 days between the proposed final, the vote on the proposed final and then on the final budget, we work ourselves into June. On June 4th, that's the deadline to make the 2019-20 proposed budget available to the public, and that has to be in the PDE 2028 format, which is not real user-friendly, but we will probably do that before June 4th. We also have to advertise by that date, no later than June 4th, of the intent to pass the budget. We'll actually vote, or ask the board to vote on a motion to incorporate all of these things on May 20th. Then the legislative meeting is when the final vote will take on June 24th, and PDE will need to be filed, PDE 2028 will need to be filed with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and the tax rates also need to be filed with DCED. So we're taking a look back again, all the way back to July 1 of this year, where we talked about the uncommitted fund balance on July 1 of $7,182,000. That does not include the $3.6 million that was committed part of the general fund for assessment appeals of nearly $1 million, as well as 2.6 for a rate stabilization fund. That's for medical and prescription. Excuse me. Total revenue of $100 million, almost $101 million. Total expenditures for the current year estimates, $100,567,000, and then fund transfers of $2,423,000. Of that amount, of that particular amount, it's included as total expenditures, but really is a transfer or into savings accounts, so to speak. We've already made transfers in January, on January 28th, of approximately $1 million. Transfer to capital projects, some interim taxes received from business park transactions of over $500,000. And then we had transfers to debt service, one-time revenue from transfer taxes in that particular case. What has not occurred yet, but is on the agenda for May, is the transfer of what we refer to as debt fall-off from 2015-16 of $1.46 million approximately. That's what comprises the $2.4 million. Then at the end of this year, projected uncommitted ending fund balance of $5,138,000. Looking forward to next year, in the budget year that we're working on right now, you'll notice we start again with the same amount, of course, and then we have total revenue of $103 million moving forward. I want to remind everybody that at this point in time, that $103 million, and we'll focus a little bit more on this, does include a tax increase of 2.3, the ACOIN index. Total expenditures are $104.7 million, and we've been through those at the last couple of meetings. And we're still planning on fund transfers of $2 million at this point in time. That, so there's a deficit, essentially, of $3.6 million, $3.7 million. But of the difference deficit between expenditures and revenue, $2 million relates to the transfers that we're currently budgeting, as well as, and I would like to point out other variables that we will talk about, and for the people who just left us, we have $1 million currently in the expenditures for the debt service for the new $10 million bond fund, and it will not be that much. So the projected ending fund balance for next year of 1.4, close to $1.5 million, and that's uncommitted. We still need to add in the $3 million that we were discussing earlier, is 1.4, approximately $1.5 million. At this time of year in Upper Devon, we take a look at some tax scenarios to show what a tax increase of 2.3 million will yield approximately $2.6 million, which we actually talked about on January 28th for the first time. And that's a breakdown of an increase in assessment as well as an additional increase in millage of 2.3%. The assessment that's calculated on is $2,293,000,000 plus some other dollars. So that's the amount that we're currently calculating, and if you do the calculations, you'll note that the millage would be 34.4573 for next year. And based on the calculation of average assessment being $195,000, the increase for that particular tax parcel would be $151. So this particular slide just goes and represents what a 2.19% tax increase would be, 2.09 as well as 1.99, and the respective cumulative decreases as we move across the slide, and the amounts that it would represent to an individual with a home assessed at $195,000. Current updates. There are a lot of changes going on right now that we need to quantify and put together by May 16th. One of them, which is really good news, is our medical trend for the current year. We have, after the second look, our combined increase for both medical and RX. You can see the individual amounts, but it was about 3.88%. Our third look is even better than the amounts shown here. It's 2% and RX is 4.77. Of course, it's not much of a difference, but we will be reflecting in expenditures for next year only a reduction in cost of $450,000. We've recently been notified, or Mr. Sigafus has in the HR office, that 7 professional staff are going to retire. Those names right now are still being held confidential, but I can tell you that 6 of the 10 professional staff are at the top of the scale. So there will be some savings to be calculated there, as well as 4 administrators are retiring. And there will be some savings as well to discuss and project when we get together at the next Finance Committee meeting. Staffing meetings continue. We actually were all together this morning with principals at the elementary level in a meeting to talk about staffing for next year. And we need to continue to watch and maintain or monitor, I should say, what our projected enrollments are for next year. He is always looking at kindergarten and trying to decide how many faculty we need to service our children. Other future adjustments. we're trying to finalize an assessment, a major assessment appeal that will have substantial impact on the revenues being brought forward for next year. In my opinion, substantial. We do plan to have, working closely with a member of the solicitor's firm, we hope, well, more than hope, we're fairly confident that we should be able to have that information together and start sharing financially at the May 16th meeting. Madison Estates has moved from exempt, which means it did not bring in any revenue to the school district, to taxable. However, today I was digging into looking at the taxable amount for this property, and I found it kind of interesting because it transferred in, I believe it was February, we learned of the transfer, and the amount of transfer was about $58,000. I remember clearly that it sold for $11,750,000. So the calculation was pretty easy, but that's one-time money, slightly less than $60 million. But then I followed it through today into the Board of Assessment, and you would expect, I would expect, that an amount that's coming off or moving from exempt status onto the taxable status would be about the same. And because of that assumption, incorrect on my part, that the amounts would be about the same as what it was when it was exempt, which is over $5 million. I reported at the Finance Committee I was expecting that we would see approximately $174,000 in just revenue on the land as it moved from exempt to taxable. Well, today I looked at each one. It's split into 5 parcels, and when I added up the assessed value of the 5 parcels, it's less than 5 million, quite a bit less than 5 million. So the amount that I was suggesting that we would be able to include is really only about $140,000. I'm a little concerned about the common level ratio that they're applying, but that's not my place. It's just a little bit less than what I had anticipated based on what it was under exempt. However, that should mean that when it goes or is assessed on an interim basis and then finally assessed, we should see a bigger jump at that point in time in the value. Another positive note, without any qualifications, is that the interest income increase for both years is going to be go up $200,000 because unlike the market that we're going into to borrow the money, we are receiving more interest income on any investments. The investments are very conservative. They have to meet Act 72, I don't remember what year, and a lot of them are in certificates of deposit, but nonetheless, we have money of over, or have income already of over $700,000, and we expect to receive about that next year. Debt service, we've already had guest speakers again. We referred to that. We'll know what that number is, obviously, by the Finance Committee meeting next on May 16th. We will talk about the transfers. In fact, I'm sure that I will bring to you a motion or a request to transfer that $1.458 million and others as we prepare for year end, one being for rate stabilization without an amount attached to that, just to keep your options open in the fall post-audit. And Ms. Baltasano, and working with other administrators, whether they're building administrators or department, will continue to update 2018-19 estimates. We do see some positive things in some areas such as substitutes. And lastly, I didn't speak of this last Thursday night, maintaining or keeping an eye on what's going on at the state level. There was some discussion about that. Based on numbers that were released in February of this year, we might receive $100,000 more in basic ed funding, because it's calculated based on enrollment, and so those numbers do roll a little bit. And the possibility is we might receive additional special education funding by about $35,000, if I remember correctly. So just some things that we will be trying to quantify and bring to the board before the proposed final budget is publicized at the end of May. Questions?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bray. This presentation just about what was presented at our meetings this past week. So I think probably most of our questions have been asked and answered, but we may have some additional questions. Ms. Rothman?
Two things. I just didn't catch it, Brenda. The healthcare savings of 450, is that in this budget now or not?
It is not yet. So the part of the difference, the structural deficit, will be remedied by that amount.
Exactly. Okay. And then a question that I asked on Thursday night, when we're looking at what we have in our fund balance, we have several different accounts. If you add them all up between the capital projects, debt service, and the things that are committed with rate stabilization and our assessment appeals, the total is about 14 million. And I know that number is significantly higher than it was 5 years ago. And I think that you've had time now to figure out what that number was 5 years ago.
Well, actually, if we take, and part of the numbers that you're quoting and referring to is the credit opinion that was issued last week as we prepared to go to market. But if we add capital projects into that amount, the total at June 30th was $20 million. So that is quite a dramatic increase from, we'll just go back to 2013-14, where it was about $9.3 million. And then at that point in time, there was only about $360,000 in capital, and there was no debt service fund. If we were to go back the year before, it was only $6.4 million.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Lever?
I was wondering if you're doing some financial projections over 3 to 5 years, if you have enough information to be able to project with the Madison estate what might change during that time period. I mean, I know this is iffy, but I don't know if you have any better information than we don't know yet.
What's important with Madison as well as Promenade is when the first interim assessment will be made so that the property becomes taxable. I'm not sure when that would be over the next 3 years. Certainly, I shouldn't say certainly. I strongly doubt that will be during 19 and 20, hence it has been ignored for the general fund budget. We could always make assumptions and then work with those if we wanted to. But to give you a point of reference, everybody knows how long the CVS, Chipotle, and the Greek and the apartments down there at that part in the quadrangle, they were sitting at an interim assessment for quite a while. And that didn't come on until over 2 years after they were under construction. It was a much smaller property. Don't know that that will be the case when we move forward. And I could ask an appraiser maybe if they could give us any ideas when they might. But the simple and easy answer, it's speculation at best.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the board? Seeing none, at this point we are up to our first community input. This is an opportunity for the community input for action items and presentations included on tonight's agenda. There'll be a second community input at the conclusion of the meeting.
Ginny Vitella, Ambler. From the Madison estate, I'm very familiar with that, living through that nightmare. The net that they told us to the township and school district in its entirety, after everything, is $1 million a year. Thanks.
Anita Brister, Fort Washington. I wasn't at the last finance meeting. I don't know if this was, well, it might have been already covered somewhere else, but I might have missed it. The proposed tax increase of 2.3%, is that this year's Act 1 index? So we're at the index, we're at the limit of the index, or that's what you're proposing. Probably don't need to do this, but I just want to remind you, Art, that you kept saying you wanted to see a decrease in the increase. So as far as our taxes, the trend
close community input. Well, Yanni wants to answer some of the questions first.
The question about the tax increase, just for everyone's edification and for those folks watching, on Thursday evening at the finance meeting, we opted to keep all of the tax increases on the table, all 4 options. There's been no definitive decisions as I look around the board table. There's a lot of work to do over the next month. So I'm not trying to not answer the question, but no one, including me, are ready to recommend a tax increase until we get closer to the actual deadline for the budget.
Okay. Anything else? Any other responses to the community input? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our agenda tonight. First will be are there any announcements or communications this break?
Nothing additional.
Okay, we have some minutes to approve.
We do, if the board would be so kind of to approve March 25th legislative meeting, the regular meeting, as well as minutes for the special legislative meeting of April the 8th of 2019, plus all the committee meetings.
Okay, so moved by Ms. Good, Ms. Rothman. Second? Or many? Pick one. Okay, comments or questions regarding the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of all minutes as indicated in the agenda, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Education Committee curriculum recommendations. Dr. Lovely.
Enrollment is an information item, so the action items are items B through G. I would like to take them all. I know that we accept them all. They were all discussed at the Education Committee meeting, except there are additional conferences and student activities.
Okay, motion's made. Is there a second? Where? Teacher, second. Okay, any comments or questions on the Education Committee recommendations for the evening? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Moving on to nothing in technology, moving on to people services. Dr. Buck.
So there's one motion in pupil services. This motion is for the annual contract for project costs for special education placement, supports, and services as prescribed by each student's IEP. I move we accept.
Okay, is there a second? Second? Okay, Mr. Sirota, thank you. Okay, comments or questions on this one item on the people services? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving on to operations. Mr. Sirota.
Thank you. We have 6 items tonight. The first is the disposal of excess obsolete non-repairable equipment that we see every month. There's some lacrosse uniforms and a lot of technology from here in the high school. And then B through F were all discussed at the operations committee meeting. I will move that we accept all 6 items.
Motion made, second by Mr. Rothman. I believe we're starting to see some of the Sandy Run obsolete equipment in there. Yep, and we'll be seeing a lot of that over the next few months, especially from the annex. So, motion was made, seconded. No additional comments or questions. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to finance tonight. Ms. Good.
Yes, thank you very much. All of the items on the Finance Committee recommendations were covered at the committee meeting, and then we had the 2 presentations on the parameters bond resolution and proposed final budget. I'd like to make a motion that we pass all 6 items A through F.
Second, Ms. Francis. Comments or questions on any of the items under finance tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Moving on to personnel.
Thank you. Tonight we only have one item. It is the monthly personnel report.
which reviews any change in status, so forth, for staff in the district. And just as a note, any retirements will be reviewed at a later meeting when the names are announced and celebration will be had then.
Is there a second? Ms. Rothman, thank you. Comments or questions on the personnel report tonight? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, moving on to policy. Ms. Rothman.
Thanks. We have a second reading and approval of a administrative regulation that is 118. We also have second reading repeals because again we are moving our 400s and 500s off the books and just having 300s and covering employees. Those repeals are 420, 421, 521, 422, 522. We also have for first reading tonight 123, 130, 320, 321, and 322. And just as a reminder, policy 130, this is a repeated first reading. We're still working on the administrative regulation on that one.
Okay, is there a second? Mr. Sirota. Comments or questions on the policy committee recommendations this evening? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. I don't see any other business. Okay, we'll move on to liaison reports. Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, Dr. Ludwig.
The FCIU met on Wednesday, April 24th, and the next meeting is May 22nd.
Okay, thank you. Montgomery County Legislative Committee, Ms. Rothman.
Thanks. We had our annual legislative breakfast back at the very end of March. Both Dr. Yanni and I attended and met with some of our legislators, those who attended. We have the next meeting will be in May. At that breakfast, we spoke considerably about the need for cyber charter school funding reform, which is, I believe, a topic that was discussed today at Advocacy Day.
Okay, moving on to Eastern Center for Arts and Technology. Dr. Poznarski is now on board at Eastern as the executive director. Mr. Allen will be there till the end of June, serving as administrator on special assignment, I believe is the title. We will be meeting next week at Eastern. Moving on to the Excellence and Equity Steering Committee. Dr. Kim is not here tonight. Not sure if anybody has anything to speak about regarding that. Okay, Dr. Yanni.
We're currently working with Secretary Rivera to determine a date for him to come and help facilitate our World Cafe.
That's wonderful. Okay, Educational Advisory Committee, Ms. Sherby.
The EAC is meeting on Wednesday, and we'll discuss some first drafts of this year's topics. So there's a good chance we'll have some reports to present in June.
Great. Okay, Pennsylvania School Boards, as we've indicated a number of times tonight, today was Advocacy Day, a very successful day, and then we'll move on to PTA, PTO, Ms. Francis.
We have an upcoming joint leadership meeting for PTO, PTA, also the Leaders Speak, on May 23rd. That's a Thursday from 5 to 7 p.m. Here in, not here, I'm sorry, at the Barn Boardroom at the office. And hopefully those individuals should have received an invitation.
Thank you. Moving on to Township, Mr. Rofsky.
We met in March, but we will not be meeting until, our next meeting won't be until the summer months.
Okay, the Government Education Foundation, that's good.
The foundation met last Tuesday and getting ready and ramping up for the medal ceremony as well as the township triathlon, which the foundation benefits from. So we're still busy.
Okay, Solicitor's Report.
Okay, well, first, executive session announcement. There was an executive session tonight to discuss personnel and also litigation matters. I also would like to make the board aware that there was a recent federal judge that denied a challenge made to ordinances passed by 3 municipalities and 1 school district regarding what are called responsible contractor ordinances. So in short, the ordinances were upheld by the federal court as a proper use of, in that case, school district and municipal discretion. So there'll be more about it in an upcoming update.
Okay, we are up to the second community input. It's an opportunity for community to provide input for on any topic. You can limit to 4 minutes. Please state your name and where you reside in the township.
Anita Bristol, Fort Washington. Just want to make sure I understand this clearly about the budget. Does this mean, so you'll be voting on a proposed final budget in May, or the May legislative meeting, correct? Okay. Question on the status of cost overruns at Sandy Run Middle School. I was at the March 21st meeting. It's the last meeting that I attended. Where it was this, I missed some of the April meetings. So anyway, at that point, we were up to pretty much $75 million. Not counting planetarium, and I think that was also not counting a second gym. Just want to know if anything's changed in the last month. Are we still at about $75 million, or is it more than that?
Anyone else? Close community input. Dr. Yanni.
As of last Thursday evening, I'm looking at Ms. Bray because if I misspeak, she'll tell me. We are at 75.5 million. That includes everything in the project. That includes the planetarium and the Ox Gym. So that's everything is in there.
Thank you. And obviously, the statement I like to make is we won't know until we know. We will know when the bids come in, and that's when we'll know what it will cost us. The best estimate right now, estimating, I believe, conservatively, but we'll find out when they come in July. Any other comments from the board regarding community input? Any closing comments from the board or the superintendent? Okay. Please refer to the agenda for our upcoming meetings. And seeing no other business, is there a motion to adjourn? Ms. Rothman, second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you.